In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about what to expect at your USCIS interview during the COVID-19 pandemic once your interview is finally scheduled or been rescheduled. Whatever situation applies to you. So make sure to stick around and watch this video because I'm going to give you all of the information that you need to know. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I know many of you have been wondering when your interview is going to be scheduled for, when you can expect to get that interview appointment notice, whether it was canceled before and you're waiting for it to be rescheduled, or you are getting it scheduled for the very first time. So I wanted to make this video so you can know exactly what to expect once that glorious day comes and you receive your appointment notice, letting you know that you have an interview scheduled and you're almost at the finish line for your case to be done. So we'll get into all of that in just a little bit. Before we get started though, make sure you give this video a thumbs up so YouTube knows to spread it throughout the platform. That way more people will have access to this video and can make use of this information. Also, make sure you are subscribed. Join the D'Angela family, whether this is your first time watching one of my videos or if you've seen my videos before. Also turn on your notifications by hitting that bell button so you can stay up to date with the latest immigration updates. Alright, so let's get into today's video. As things are starting to get rescheduled, whether it's a biometrics appointment or it's the interview, things are starting to get back on track. However, there are some changes that we will be seeing. One thing that hasn't changed is that always arrive at the USCIS facility no more than 15 minutes earlier than your scheduled appointment. If it's earlier than 15 minutes before your appointment, they won't let you into the building. So make sure you don't arrive more than 15 minutes early. If you are attending your interview with your attorney, it depends on the field office, but the field office might require one or the other to wait outside the building until the second person arrives. That way you and your attorney can enter the building simultaneously at the same time. So that depends on whichever field office you're attending. It's not really a big deal, but just keep in mind that that might happen if you're waiting for your attorney to show up, or if your attorney is waiting for you to show up. They might require both to enter at the same time. And of course, you already know, wear a facial covering that covers your nose and mouth. When you attend your interview, they won't let you in the building if you don't have some sort of facial mask protection covering both the nose and the mouth. Children under the age of 2, that's not applicable to them. If the child is over 2, then they will be required to wear the face mask covering the nose and mouth. Also, upon entering the building, a security officer will ask you COVID-19 related questions, health screening questions, whether you have any symptoms, whether you've come into close contact with anybody that has or had COVID-19 within the last 14 days. Be prepared to answer those questions upon entering the building. And once you enter the waiting room, you will see that certain seats are blocked off to ensure proper social distancing. So there will be limited capacity, much smaller capacity in the USCIS offices. This is also a huge reason why interviews are taking longer to be scheduled. USCIS can only schedule/reschedule a certain amount of interviews per day because they are working at limited capacity in their waiting rooms. USCIS is also being strict with who they are allowing you to have accompany you to your interview. You can only be accompanied by your attorney or authorized representative. And if you are a minor, you can be accompanied by a parent or legal guardian. And immediate family members, if they are also listed as dependents on the interview appointment notice. So only those immediate family members that have their own application, have their own interview that same day, can accompany you. If your family member is not part of your case, not part of your process, not listed as a dependent, doesn't have an interview scheduled, then they cannot enter the building with you. Also, those with disabilities are allowed to have an individual accompany them that is responsible for helping them. So an individual helping a person with disabilities will be allowed to enter the building. One important thing I want to mention is interpreters will not be allowed to enter the building. They can only appear telephonically. So keep that in mind. Those of you that have an interpreter, requested an interpreter to attend the interview with you, the interpreter can only appear telephonically. They cannot go with you inside the building and appear physically. Once you enter the building, you will notice that all USCIS employees are, of course, wearing masks. And these USCIS employees are also required to wear masks throughout the interview. Now, that can be a little intimidating for some because you won't be able to see their facial expressions. A lot of people can gauge whether the interview is going well based on the officer's facial expressions. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that now. They are required to wear face masks throughout the entire interview despite there being a plexiglass in front of them. So at the time of your interview in the officer's office, they will have a plexiglass at the edge of their desk. You are required to hand them documents some of the time. So they'll either instruct you to slide it under the plexiglass or to hand it around to them around the plexiglass. And depending on the size of the office, your attorney might also be asked to stand outside in the hallway if the office is too close quarters, it's too small. They might be asked to be waiting outside, but in earshot, and they're able to listen to everything's going on, or sit in a different room. It really depends on the size of the office. Don't be alarmed. Obviously, your attorney can still accompany you and will still be able to listen in on what's being asked, but just be aware that they might be asked to stand outside in the hallway or in another office, and the attorney can listen through the USCIS telephone system. So the attorney can go with you to the USCIS field office, but depending on the size of the office will determine whether they're allowed to sit in the interviewer's office with you or whether they would be asked to stand outside in the hallway and listen through the door, or sit in a different room and listen to the interview through their telephone system. Now, if you're going to require an interpreter, make sure the attorney presents the proper form signed by the interpreter. The form G-1256 must be signed by the interpreter, handed to the officer, and you must also give the officer the interpreter's phone number, their direct contact. That way, at the time of the interview, the officer can get them on the phone so they can appear telephonically. So those are things to keep in mind in general with respect to the interview's procedure and what to expect. Now let's talk about the general family and marriage-based interviews a little bit. If you're attending a marriage-based interview with your spouse, don't be alarmed if the officer separates the two of you. It can happen, especially if capacity is limited in the office and they're trying to limit the amount of people in the office. Don't worry, that isn't an automatic sign, especially because of COVID and the current pandemic. It is very, very possible that they do separate the couple and interview them separately. I know previously people would be worried or tell you that, hey, that's a bad sign. If they do separate the couple, it's typically a negative sign if the officer separates the couple, but don't automatically assume the worst. It could happen just because of the pandemic and them trying to ensure proper social distancing and limit the amount of people in the office. So that's just something to keep in mind. Don't freak out right away if you are asked to be separated from your spouse. And one thing I do want to mention with respect to naturalization, before naturalization, interviews would be conducted on one day, and then the applicant, if their case was approved, would be asked to return on another date for the oath ceremony. Now, it's possible that certain naturalization applicants will have the oath ceremony the same day as their interview. It is possible. The normal procedure is that you go home and then you get an notice of oath ceremony later on. But that's just something to keep in mind. So depending on the office, the oath ceremony might be conducted right after the interview. So definitely be prepared for that. So those are the brief details that I just wanted to give you, just so you're prepared when it does come time for you to attend your interview. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you can be notified the next time I have an update for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.